Welcome to the Illinois Divorce Guide podcast, where we break down the complex and emotional process of divorce into manageable, easy-to-understand steps. I'm your host, Greer Howard, and with me is Bobby Buchanan, widely recognized as one of Illinois' top divorce attorneys, offering unmatched insight and experience in family law. Well, Bobby, I am so excited to be back with you today, and we've got a great topic. We're going to be talking about how to choose the right divorce lawyer. And, there's so many things to think about, Bobby. Obviously it's a really stressful time when you're going through a divorce and you have to make this decision. And is it based off of credentials, maybe their courtroom experience? Is it off of their strategy? So why don't we talk a little bit about how to find the right divorce attorney?
Let's do it, Greer. Good to see you. Good to be back for another episode. How do you choose a lawyer? I can't even choose a mechanic or a plumber. I mean, it's the same sort of thing at the end of the day. But this is something I think it feels a little bit more overwhelming because most of us have never hired a lawyer before. I mean, let's be honest, you only hire a lawyer when things aren't going great, unless you're getting, an estate plan done or a will and you're being proactive. But most of the time, lawyers get involved when something happened that isn't necessarily good. So we got to hire a lawyer for the first time, and then we're hiring someone that, there's a lot of things that have been said about lawyers, a lot of beliefs about lawyers, good, bad, everything in between. And then lawyers also, they charge, like they have these crazy hourly, wages or hourly rates that you hear about. Anywhere from probably $200 to $2,000 an hour is what a lawyer is going to charge. So that can feel really intimidating. Like the whole thing surrounding hiring a lawyer can feel very intimidating.
Yeah. Would you say that hiring your attorney kind of like sets the tone for what this process is going to look like?
Yes, absolutely. I think that who you hire is going to be basically the captain of the ship. Whether I can't figure out whether the analogy is they're like the navigator or the captain, because you as the client, ultimately it's your goals.
Mm-hmm.
You're hiring the lawyer. The lawyer does work for you, but at the same time, they're taking you through completely uncharted waters. It's like going on a expedition through the forest, and that you need to find the treasure at the end of it, but you don't know what kind of snakes or lions or poisonous plants are in there, and you're hiring someone who is local to the area and knows it all. So it would be silly to tell your lawyer, for example, or your guide, hey, let's make a left here. I don't think we should, let's cross the river instead of climbing the tree or whatever. I'm not good at coming up with these on the fly, but you get the idea. Like let the guide decide those little day-to-day decisions, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
I'm actually really digging that analogy, Bobby, because this is obviously an area of expertise that the attorney has. They've been on these adventures before, but every adventure is a little bit different, right? Because you don't know what circumstances you're going to be running into, but you want them to have that experience because hopefully divorce is not something that you are super accustomed to, And, why don't we talk about like, what are some kind of like types, like what are the types of lawyers that you're going to find?
Yeah. So I think we could break this down. Let's keep it simple into three basic types. So you're going to have your litigator, pit bull, bulldog, shark attorney. That's on one side of the spectrum. On the other side of the spectrum is going to be the people pleaser, also known as the lazy lawyer. That's on the other side. And then there's what I like to think of as the strategic collaborator, or the strategic partner as an attorney. You can probably guess from how I frame these which one we consider ourselves. I mean, we're definitely want to be a strategic collaborator in this process. Not to say the pit bull attorney can't get it done for you, or even the people pleaser attorney
Mhm.
can't get it done for you. But you should, at a minimum, have a lawyer that is self-aware and understands what kind of attorney they are and what their strategy is. I mean, if your attorney doesn't have a strategy to get you from A to Z, then how can they explain it to you? How can you understand whether or not you're on the same page?
Yeah, yeah. Bobby, I can't believe you're not describing yourself as a pit bull. I mean, gosh, you know? No, that's definitely not you. As many episodes as we've done, Pitbull, I would not put in your description. But I do think that it's common when someone is going through a divorce for people to be advised, like, hey, you need a Pitbull. Like, you need somebody to get in there and really fight for you. So is that always good in theory? Or, I mean, in some cases, maybe you don't really want a pit bull because, I mean, I'm imagining there's some risks with that too.
Yeah, I mean, there's cases where, let's say a let's say your spouse is very savvy. Maybe they're even a lawyer themselves, or they're a shrewd business person or a shrewd executive. Uh, and so your friends who've known you and have seen you throughout this marriage and have seen kind of who, quote unquote, wears the pants or who's making the shots in the marriage, they've seen this whole process and they understand, like, if you don't have somebody with a backbone, your husband or your wife is going to walk all over you. And so I think that there's some validity in that. I think your friends are looking out for you when they say you need a pit bull or you need a shark of an attorney, because what they're really saying is you need someone who's not going to be stepped on. And so, but what's dangerous is you could take their advice and then hire a lawyer who's just aggressive for aggressive for the sake of aggressiveness, and that's not a strategy. That's
Mm.
that's not really a strategy. That's not what that's going to end up with. Is a case most likely that just lasts longer, costs more, is more stressful, because being aggressive usually um invites the other side to be as aggressive as well.
Right. So maybe it's more important overall to have a strategy, but maybe in particular cases you want someone that like could be that pit bull if you needed it. Maybe,
Yeah.
maybe that's kind of where you land. And so while we're here, okay, so let's sort of break it down a little bit and talk about like what actually matters. Like what should people be sort of looking for when they're trying to find an attorney?
The number one thing is somebody that you feel like understands you and that you can talk to, because at the end of the day, this is about trust. If you don't trust your lawyer, you're not going to take their advice. You're always going to be questioning what they're suggesting to do. So you need to find somebody, and trust is generally built through communication, through empathy, through listening. I mean, that's how we try to build trust with our own clients, is we let them do the talking, especially at the beginning of the case, so we can understand what are their goals, what do they want to accomplish, where have they been, what has been their journey, how did they get here, do they want this divorce or do they not want this divorce, do they trust, do they see themselves as being a good co-parent, do they see their spouse as being a good co-parent, how do they want this process to go. The more that we can understand them, the more we can help them, the more they trust us, the more we can help them. It's kind of this whole symbiosis.
What about experience in the state where they're practicing law? I mean, that's got to come into play as well, right?
Yeah, people try to hire us from other states from time to time. Unfortunately, one, we just can't do it because we're not licensed in other states. So each lawyer, the way that this works is each state licenses lawyers, and then you can only practice in the state that you have a license.
Mhm.
So even if we wanted to represent somebody in California, we're not allowed to. And then the second part of it is, you need a lawyer who is truly an expert in the area of law in the state where you're getting divorced. There are certain cases where our client might have an option. In certain circumstances, you might have an option whether to file in California or in Illinois, and the laws are different. So what do? We get on the phone with a colleague in the state where you have an option to file, and we talk it through to figure out, does it make sense for our client to file here or file there? But yeah, you want a lawyer who has very specific knowledge to the place that you're filing for divorce.
Yeah. Are there any like a couple things on the top of your head that maybe make Illinois different than other states? Or, is there something that maybe surprises people when they're going through a divorce that is true for Illinois that may not be true for a neighboring state? Is there anything like that?
The two biggest ones are that Illinois is an equitable distribution state, which means that the property can be divided. It doesn't have to be divided 50-50, whereas California, for example, is a community property state where it's a lot more cut and dry as far as how the property is divided. And then the second one is, and I think this one is a bit more controversial, there are some states that have a presumption of 50-50 time. Illinois does not. So I believe Arizona has a presumption. If you get divorced there, either side has to really show a strong case why both sides shouldn't have 50-50 time with the children. Illinois doesn't do that. We more work on our standard is best interest of the child, and there is no presumption that it should be 50-50. Now, we could have an entire episode, and I think we probably should, on talking through that and which one is better, and does it really matter what my opinion is as far as that goes, not as far as representing you, but I think it is important to understand the nuance. But so here, what it means, practically speaking, is we got to be really strategic as far as if our client wants 50-50 and they haven't had as much participation in the day-to-day caretaking, we need to bolster their case before we file it, before we decide to litigate it. We have to be more strategic because we're not going to get the benefit of that legal presumption.
Gotcha. Okay. What about, you talked a little bit about this, but like the philosophy of the practice and like how they sort of in general go about divorce. I mean, I'm assuming that's an important thing to make sure you're discussing with a potential attorney.
Yeah, some attorneys, their philosophy for divorce is client hires us, we file the case, we start filing motions, we do full discovery, and that's how we create leverage to settle the case, which can work. It's not, I don't want people to think like there's one way to do this, one right way and one wrong way. That's just not our philosophy. The reason being that filing the case, getting into court, as soon as you do that, you have deadlines being set by the judge. You have a judge that's weighing in on things, that putting pressure on both sides. And my general feeling is the more you get the court involved, the less control you have over the process. So what we like to do is see what we can resolve diplomatically. If we can do it just by negotiation between the parties, that's the best. If I can sit back and just guide my client on, here are the things that you need to talk to your spouse about. Here's like a checklist of what you need to run through with them. And you guys can figure it out over the course of maybe one evening or several weeks or even several months, and things are okay, then I'm going to stay out of it and just guide you kind of behind the scenes.
Yeah.
If we can't do it that way, then maybe we get a mediator involved, and that's a good way to keep it out of court. Or maybe we go down the collaborative divorce route where we're all kind of have this more structured approach. We're all deciding that we are not going to go in court, but we do need expert help and making sure that we have support from all angles. Those are all the ways that we try to keep things from being litigated. But like we were talking about before, sometimes you need a pit bull. Sometimes there's very specific moments in a case where you do need a shark of an attorney. In those cases, we know how to recognize that, and we'll dive in and we'll file those emergency motions or, go to the judge and request what we need to request. So again, it's about being strategic.
Yeah. So on a practical, thought here, if someone's listening and they're like, okay, I'm going to talk to a couple of different attorneys, could you give like maybe 2 or 3 questions that, they should ask to help clarify whether maybe that attorney is right for them?
So the first question I think is just asking, and this is going to open the door to what their approach is, and that's what we want to find out. What is your general approach to resolving this case? What do you think? Like, the first thing to notice, and this isn't so much of a question, but just kind of really key in on who's doing more of the talking here. Is the lawyer just coming out and just trying to educate or teach me on the process without understanding anything about because a lot of people just get talked to by lawyers. And obviously I do a lot of talking in this podcast, but if we had a potential client on here, it would be about listening. It would be about asking them the right questions to get responses out of them. So I think the most important question is, what's your general approach to resolving a case like mine? See if they ask you about your goals, what you ultimately want to accomplish. And if they don't, then that is somewhat of a red flag that they're not going to be the best partner to get this done. And you're going to constantly feel uneasy, like you don't understand why the lawyer's doing what they're doing. Because frankly, I don't know if the lawyer knows why they're doing what they're doing if they haven't listened to you.
Sure. Well, I'd love to lean into the red flags. This now feels like we're going into a dating episode of, who to date. So it's kind of like figuring out your attorney. What would be some red flags that you would say, hey, if you see this, if they say this, like, run, this is not somebody you want to be, helping you with your divorce?
Yeah, and let's hope that this dating relationship is the one instance where we want it to be kind of a short-term. Let's make it a short-term fling. That's
a fling.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want your relationship with your lawyer to be a short-term fling, in the most professional sense of the phrase.
Absolutely.
So that we're getting this done. The divorce process can be done in a matter of weeks or a couple months if we do it right. If you don't choose the right lawyer, it can definitely go on longer. So the first one is promises or guarantees. If your lawyer is saying, I guarantee you I can get you half of the property in this case, or I guarantee you're going to get this amount of alimony or maintenance, as we call it, or I guarantee you we can get this case done in a couple of months. Now, obviously, I'm talking about a good divorce lawyer can get your case done in a couple months, but I can't guarantee that. There's no way. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not the judge. I'm not the king. All I can do is say, here are the tools that we've used, the strategies we've used to get these sorts of cases done quickly. But again, there is no magic formula that guarantees anything in one of these cases. So be really careful about an attorney making guarantees. That's the big one. Second one is an attorney that seems to be almost more emotionally engaged in this than you are. Like, you can tell that they're going to take a scorched earth approach from the very beginning. Like, maybe they were wronged in their own divorce and this is about vengeance for them. Or maybe they talk about opposing counsel, the lawyer from the other side. Like, if you know the lawyer that your spouse has hired, which you often do if they've hired a lawyer first, and you mention that to your attorney, and they have some like really visceral emotional reaction to that lawyer, that is a huge red flag, because you know that they're going to make it personal against that lawyer, and that's the last thing you want. As lawyers, we're trying to like insulate you from the emotions of this. We should not be adding our own emotions to this process. So be very careful of lawyers that seem a little too emotional about it.
I feel like this is the perfect time when wrong time for the pit bull. This is, if the pit bull is coming out at this stage of the game, this might be the wrong pit bull for your case.
Absolutely. The pit bull should be in the doghouse at this point. They should not be coming out during the consultation.
Right.
The third big one is like poor communication from the get-go. Both, we talked about them talking too much, being overly communicative. Like, some lawyers just love to hear themselves talk, want you to know what great experts they are. That's definitely a red flag, because it shows that they're not going to be very good listeners and understand your needs and your wants. But then the other thing is, we don't always hire our lawyer right away after the consultation. If there's an email back and forth, let's say you send your lawyer an email, your potential lawyer, and they take days or a week to get back to you, that is a big sign that either they're slow to respond to emails, they're overwhelmed by their current clientele, or they just don't understand the importance to you and they don't get back to you very quickly. Like, I always say, believe people when they show you who they are. Like, generally, who people are with you during your first interaction with them is who they are in general. You're not seeing some exceptional part of them. So if you see this stuff right off the bat, that's who they are, and you have to be prepared for that.
I think wasn't it Maya Angelou who said it best? It was
She said it better than me. I can tell you
when
that right now.
people show you who they are, believe them. I think that's what it was. Is that it? Yeah.
That's one of my favorite quotes.
It's so good.
It's so good. It really, it's applicable like every single day.
Yeah. And then you think about too, with that, like, to add on for that poor communication, think about the time that's going to add to your case. If you aren't hearing back from your attorney, something that could have been potentially wrapped up quickly is taking weeks, months, longer. And then even if it's something that was going to take a long time, I mean, you might be double, tripling your time, and it just doesn't feel good to be in that process any longer than you have to be. So I think that's a great, point to just bring up, that if at the beginning the communication isn't great, you need to probably just assume that that's the way the communication is going to be moving forward. So maybe you just need to keep on going to somebody else.
Keep on communicating with other attorneys at that point, or have a few of these discussions. I mean, like, you don't hire the first lawyer that you find on Google. Have a few conversations with different offices. Don't be afraid. Some attorneys do free consultations, others don't. That doesn't mean that one is better than the other. It's just kind of a business choice that they've made. Don't be afraid to spend a couple $100s or a few $100s even doing a couple different consultations to find the right one. Your divorce is going to cost anywhere from $3,500 to $35,000 or more. So investing a little bit in the selection process can actually save you money on the back.
Yeah. And, you mentioned Googling. What are your thoughts on, you're just going to Google to find, like, looking up, like, best attorney in Illinois, best divorce attorney, and that's pretty common that, people, when they don't know, they just sort of do that. Right. So do you have any ideas of, like, how to kind of extend your network a little bit, of maybe to get a wider selection than just like the top 3 Google, attorneys that show up on Google?
Aside from finding, a great podcast and then hiring the lawyer that you hear,
like this one.
Yeah. No. So Googling it's not horrible. It's not the worst way to go. I mean, people find us through Google and we form great relationships with them, great long-term relationships with them. The other way to go is, you're asking your friends or your colleagues if they have a divorce attorney recommendation. That one can be good or bad, because sometimes people get the wrong expectations where they go, oh, well, you got my friend divorced in 2 months, so I know you can do that for me. I understand that every single divorce is different. So don't focus so much on the outcome that the attorney got your friend or your colleague. Focus on, how was the relationship? Were they responsive to emails? Were they communicative? Did they explain things clearly? Were they a joy to work with? Did you feel professional support from them? Those are the things that the attorney can truly control. They're not going to be able to control the ultimate outcome. Now, obviously,
Right.
if they're a good lawyer, you're going to have better outcome, but it's more about the relationship than anything. So let me think if there's any other great ways to find.
And I guess, like, maybe, like, getting into the reviews a little bit more, as opposed to just Googling, but maybe
Yeah.
trying to see what some of maybe the feedback is from people. And like you said, every case is different, so you can't, and like you said, it would be a red flag if you could guarantee, and we can't really even say win a case because we're not it's not really winning. We're trying to come up with an agreement, to disassemble this marriage. But, maybe some of those reviews could be helpful of just,
Yeah.
and maybe some of that type of thing is discussed, as opposed to, hey, we won, but more like, the communication was great and they, listened to what I had to say. So I think thinking a little bit deeper is important as opposed to just simply maybe Googling and seeing what comes, what pops up first or whatever.
Definitely dive into any additional information that you can get. So, check out their reviews, check out their website, go through their website and see if you can get a feel for what their philosophy is. See if are they a big team? Are they a small team? Now, do you want a big team or a small team? There's pros and cons of that as well. You can hire what I call a super solo divorce attorney, and I know several. I'm really good friends with excellent super solo divorce attorneys. What do I mean by super solo? I mean, like, some lawyers, they're their own paralegal, their own secretary, their own receptionist. It's just them.
Mhm.
What's the pro of that? There's only one person to talk to. There's no one to pass the buck in the office. You just get to talk to them. What's the con of that? There's no one else to help. And sometimes it feels like it's really hard to get them on the phone or get a response to the email. So depending on whether or not that's something that is okay with you is going to dictate whether or not you want to hire a super solo attorney. My office, we do have a team of lawyers. And I think what the advantage of that is not only are we agile and flexible as far as our representation goes, but we have this amazing kind of think tank inside of our law firm. So when one of us comes across a situation that maybe we haven't seen before, or we know there's multiple angles to approach it from, we can go to our colleagues and say, hey, what do you think of this? How would you deal with this? I mean, that's how professionals handle any sort of complex problem. I mean,
Mhm.
if you talk to doctors when they have a difficult case, the first thing they're going to do is bring it to their board or bring it to their group and talk about it so that they can make sure they're thinking about it from all angles. So that's the benefit of hiring a divorce firm rather than a super solo lawyer.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's pros and cons to both, I guess. And it really depends on, the individual's like particular situation, right? So maybe we should talk about some of the things that maybe feel like green flags of like, wait, for my particular situation, it feels like, having this team behind me, feels comforting, or maybe vice versa, maybe having the single, just the solo attorney feels better. What would you say are some of those things that if they start feeling a certain way that maybe they're heading in the right direction, that they might be getting the right attorney?
I mean, and I think that any of us are, this is very general. So I think you're probably as much of an expert on this as I am, but, and it comes down to how we make decisions in general. It's like, after you talk to somebody, just check in with yourself. How are you feeling about the discussion? Do you feel like you were heard? Do you feel like this person understands your pain? Do you feel like, maybe they understand it more than you understand it? That's usually a good sign that you're talking to an expert, is if they understand your situation better than you do, or that's the feeling that you get. Um,
Well, yeah, and it's like, obviously going through a divorce is so emotional, and I think that you don't I think it's probably likely that you may be calling your attorney upset about something or high on something, because you're worried or scared or whatever it is. And I would think you would want that attorney to bring you down to feel like, hey, it's going to be okay. I have this idea and that idea, so don't worry. As opposed to like if you were to call that attorney and they got you almost like more ramped up, because then you get off the phone and you're like, oh, I thought I was like freaking out before. Now I'm really freaking out. Like,
Right. I mean, if they're like some attorneys will try to sell with fear. And if you get off the phone and you're like feeling even more overwhelmed than when you called, that's usually not a great sign. I mean, the the best calls that we have are the ones where people leave talking to us and they tell us later, I felt so much better after talking to you for the first time.
mm,
So take that feeling that you get there and then do your due diligence. Talk to your friends and family about the process. You look up the reviews, look up the website, make sure that there's no red flags there, and then make a decision. I'm a big believer that good things come from making decisions. Even if we make a wrong decision, let's say that you do hire the wrong lawyer. You can change lawyers. People do it all the time in family law. The judge will not judge against you for it. Especially if it's in the beginning of the case, there can be a pretty seamless transition. So it's better to just make a decision to hire a lawyer. And then if you find out in the first couple of weeks, it's not the right fit, change lawyers. People do that not infrequently. We get people hiring us where they say, I put a retainer down for someone, but they haven't responded to my emails in a week, or they're suggesting we do this when I want to do that and I don't feel great about it. So they change lawyers.
If you don't mind, though, I want to peel back the curtain for a bit. And I'm curious, is it ever switched where, maybe you don't feel right about representing a certain client?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the partnership goes both ways. And I think that a really good attorney-client relationship is one where the attorney is looking for alignment as much as the client is. So if we do get a client where it feels like they have very specific ideas about how they want to litigate or run their case, and it doesn't really align with our philosophy, then that sends off red flags for us internally. And we do have to have discussions internally about, does it make sense to represent this person? And if it doesn't, we want to catch it right away in the beginning so that we can say to them, listen, we don't think this is the right fit. Here's your entire retainer back. And we do that all the, like, this is such a big thing, such a big choice for everyone that is going through this process. I know attorneys that never will give a single refund or a single dime back to a client after they've invoiced. That's just so against our philosophy, my philosophy personally. Like, I'm all about, like, here's your retainer back. Like, if this wasn't a right fit, then it's probably our fault. We should have figured it out in the beginning, but you need to have your retainer so that you can hire someone else. If we can do that at the beginning of a case, I consider that a big win for everybody involved, and the client can find someone who's more aligned with their own philosophy. Again, alignment is the name of the game.
Right. Right. Okay, well, Bobby, we've covered a lot today because like we mentioned, choosing an attorney is a big deal. It sets the tone for, the entire process, and you want someone that's going to be with you that, makes you calm, you feel like has a great strategy, is communicating well with you. So, any final thoughts today as we wrap up this discussion?
Just I want to encourage people to have, to reach out to lawyers, multiple lawyers, have discussions with them, make sure that you feel that alignment with the attorney or the office that you're calling, and then make a decision and go with it. If you've decided, if you're clear in your mind, I need to hire a lawyer or I want to move this process forward, then do it. Pull the trigger, hire a lawyer, and start taking action. That's how we change, our path and move forward in life. So that's what I suggest.
Awesome. Well, Bobby, thanks so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for listening to the Illinois Divorce Guide podcast. We hope today's episode gave you clarity and support as you move forward on your journey. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, rate, and review us on your favorite podcast platform. Tune in next week for more insights and expert advice on the Illinois Divorce Guide podcast.